What's going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the NOBULL Court Trainer. So the Court Trainer is really interesting. This is a cross training shoe designed to be good for things like CrossFit, lifting and cross training, and then also court sports. So playing things like tennis and pickleball. And so on a weekly basis, I play pickleball probably way too much. In fact, I use a lot of the cross training shoes I review in the context of pickleball because it's a great activity to test multi-directional tread and to test how a model's upper locks down the foot when moving in a lot of different directions. So with the Court Trainer, this has actually been one of my favorite NOBULL trainers to date. I generally like the traditional NOBULL trainer or the high top trainer, but this shoe might actually take the edge for my favorite model. So 3 things to like about this shoe is number 1, if you are like myself and you play a court sport on a regular basis and you like to use your trainers for that, and you also want a shoe that can work well when training pretty heavy and then also for tackling CrossFit and cross training workouts, this model is going to be really well suited for your needs. And now that is a very niche individual and athlete, but if you do fall into that performance category, I think you'll really like the NOBULL Court Trainer. It gives you a nice level of tread when you're moving laterally forward and backwards, and the shoe has some good durability features in the context of both lifting and court sports. And so that brings us to my second pro, which is the overall durability of the shoe. So you get the super fabric upper like you get in most NOBULL shoes, but you also have a nice medial wrap here on the forefoot. So over the toe box and on that medial side up here in the forefoot, you have a nice extended outsole, and that's awesome for pushing off the toe and moving laterally. So if you are going for a dig or whatever it might be on the court, this shoe shouldn't break down a ton, and that super fabric upper locks you down pretty well. So if you are going laterally, for example, and really stopping on a dime, this upper should do a pretty good job at locking you down and not showing signs of stress rips. So in the context of using this model for lifting, cross training, CrossFit, and court sports, I think the durability is going to be pretty on point for most folks. My third pro with this shoe is that it does have a nice blend of versatility and stability. So outside of court sports, if you want a shoe that you can kind of use for a little bit of everything, I would say that this model actually feels a little bit better for like HIIT training, plyometrics, than the traditional NOBULL trainer. It almost like walks this fine line between being a blend of the NOBULL Trainer Plus and the OG NOBULL trainer. So the midsole is a slightly thicker EVA foam. It feels very lightweight, and with the last construction of this shoe, it almost feels like it puts you into like a forefoot bias. So when you're playing court sports, you're likely going to be on your forefoot a lot. So that being said, in the context of how this shoe performs for different activities, I do like how this model performs. So those are my 3 pros with this model. Honestly, this model has been a very subtle surprise, and it makes me really happy because that makes me feel like my investment wasn't a waste. But now let's talk about a couple of cons I have with the NOBULL Court Trainer. So 2 potential cons that I could see folks having with the NOBULL Court Trainer is number 1, the breathability for this model I think could be a little bit better. So if you plan to wear these for longer training sessions, or if you're outside in the summer and it's very hot, or if you plan to wear them all day, you might run into a pretty hot or warm foot, especially if you're wearing thicker socks. So that being said, if you do plan to rock this model for longer sessions or in hotter climates, I would say wear thinner no-show socks if you can, or like more athletic socks that give you a little bit more breathability. While the super fabric upper I like for durability, it's not the most breathable upper on the market. The second potential drawback that I could see folks having with this model is that if you don't necessarily need a training shoe for court sports, then you could likely look into other models and save a little bit of money at a price point of $139 USD that is slightly higher than other cross training shoes on the market. And if you don't necessarily have that ask for a shoe designed for also being good for court sports, then you could save by looking into other models. Now, I do like this shoe as a NOBULL trainer. So if you are on the fence between the NOBULL Trainer Plus and the NOBULL trainer, I almost think this is like a good happy medium between those, so the price point could be justified for you. But for the athlete and lifter that doesn't care about the court sports performance and they want to save a little bit more money, you could definitely look into other models and save a little bit while not dropping $139 USD for a shoe that is pretty niche in its construction. Also, just a quick FYI, in all of the pickleball clips in this video, I am rocking khakis. I was shooting for another video when I got the B-roll on the court in these shoes. I do not normally play in khakis, and that being said, if you're ever in the Denver area, hit me up and let's play some pickle. So when chatting on the performance in the NOBULL Court Trainer, I'm going to break this section into a few different parts. I'm going to talk about lifting, versatile training, court sports, and then shorter runs and daily wear. So in the context of lifting, and for CrossFit for that matter, I like the NOBULL Court Trainer. It feels very similar to the Trainer Plus and the traditional NOBULL Trainer in the sense that I would say it's a pretty good, well-rounded shoe. You get a nice level of stability from the EVA foam midsole, and the outsole grips a lot of different surfaces well. So if you are training on turf, wooden platforms, or rubber gym floors, you should not have an issue with the tread in this model, and the midsole is plenty stable to train really heavy. So similarly with the NOBULL Trainer, stability is never really an issue. I can't see that being an issue in the Court Trainer for most lifters and athletes. When it comes to versatile training, I like this model as a whole. The thicker EVA foam midsole gives you a little bit more pop, and overall with the last construction, I mentioned this in the pros, but it almost feels like the shoe creates like a forefoot bias. So in the context of exploding laterally or doing plyos or other forms of hit work where you do want a little bit more pop in that forefoot, I do like this shoe's overall fit and feel. Plus it has a pretty lightweight build to it, which I'm a fan of, and I also like the heel construction and how it really locks down that heel. You never really have slip issues in this model, which I'm a fan of. Plus the tongue is padded and perforated, which I also like just for overall comfort reasons, and you never really have issues with tongue friction on the top of the foot. When it comes to court sports, I like this model. Now, it's hard to compare this shoe to like a true tennis shoe or like a true pickleball shoe, but if you are somebody who wants that shoe that can play really well in all these different worlds, I think this shoe's performance is going to be pretty stellar for you. You get a nice level of tread with this herringbone tread patterning on the outsole, plus with the outsole wrap up here in the forefoot, I don't think durability is going to be an issue for most folks, especially when using this model a lot and using them for a lot of lateral work and explosive sprint work, whether it be forwards or backwards. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of stress rips forming around this shoe's toe box. Plus, I feel like this EVA foam midsole does a pretty good job at walking that fine line between being stable and versatile. So you get a nice level of energy return with this shoe, and it's stable enough to promote balance and also give you a nice base to push off on for being explosive, but it doesn't also beat the feet up if you do want to wear them for longer pickleball or tennis sessions. In the context of shorter runs and daily wear, the shoe is okay. For shorter runs, I think this model will work similarly to how the Trainer and the Trainer Plus worked, as in, I would say you'd probably want to cap your running to about 3 miles or less in the shoe if you plan to use them for running focused workouts. If you're just tackling short runs and wads, I don't think you're going to mind the overall fit and feel with the shoe. It does feel more comfortable than the OG NOBULL Trainer. And then for daily wear, the shoe works as well, but once again, breathability might be an issue. So definitely I would say wear the right socks in this model if you're going to be wearing them in warmer climates. But for daily wear, I like them. They're easy to clean, but breathability could definitely be an issue for some folks. So now to answer the question, who are the NOBULL Court Trainers best for? So there are two populations that I think will work really well with this shoe. Number one, if you are like myself and you play pickleball, tennis, or any court sport on a regular basis, and you use your training shoes in a lot of cases for that sport, but then also wear them for training, CrossFit, cross training, whatever it might be, this model is definitely worth looking into. In the context of cross training shoes that can play in all those different worlds, the Court Trainer I would say is one of the better models on the market for that context. The second population is the person who is looking into NOBULL trainers, and you're on the fence between something like the NOBULL Trainer Plus and the OG NOBULL Trainer. This model, I would say, is the happy medium between those two shoes. The NOBULL Trainer Plus's stack height is a little bit higher than this model, and this midsole is a little bit more versatile than the OG NOBULL Trainer's midsole. So I think it does a slightly better job at giving you a bit more versatile feel when you're training, but also delivering a nice level of stability and versatility. So if you are somebody who's on the fence between those two models, I would say the Court Trainer is definitely a good option to look into. When chatting on the sizing and fit in the NOBULL Court Trainer, most lifters and athletes I think should be safe going true to size in this model. Now, if you wear the OG NOBULL Trainer now, this model does run a little bit longer than the OG model. So what I would suggest doing is to look at the toe box and the space you have in your NOBULL Trainer. If you have, I would say, more than a ½ inch, then you'll want to size down a half size in the Court Trainer. But I think for most individuals, this model should fit fairly true to size for you. When chatting on the price of the NOBULL Court Trainer, once again, you can expect to pay $139 USD. Now, I think if you are looking for that niche shoe that works for court sports and lifting, cross-training, and CrossFit, that price can easily be justified. However, once again, if you're not necessarily interested in a shoe that can perform in that context, you can likely search around and find a model that will cost you a little bit less. All right, guys, now let's talk about the weight, heel, toe drop, and insole in the NOBULL Court Trainer. So for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 12.10 ounces. The heel to toe drop in this shoe is 4 millimeters, similar to the other NOBULL cross training shoes, and this model does feature a thin foam removable insole. So now let's go over the construction of the NOBULL Court Trainer. Up here on the toe box, we have an extended outsole layer that wraps up. It is pretty heavy here on the medial forefoot as well. Personally, I like this feature a lot for both performance and durability reasons. Looking at the midsole, we have a slightly thicker EVA foam midsole compared to the NOBULL Trainer. Looking at the outsole, we have a herringbone tread patterning throughout the entirety of the outsole. We also have some NOBULL branding here. On the upper, we have a super fabric upper that extends the entirety of this shoe. That is pretty stereotypical with NOBULL cross training shoes. On the lateral heel, we have some NOBULL branding, and then back here on the heel as well, we have a little bit of NOBULL branding. On the heel, we have an additional collar and a little bit of additional padding that helps provide this heel with a little bit more of like a lockdown feeling when you're training or when you're playing. Looking at the midfoot, we have 5 core eyelets that wrap up. These 4 bottom eyelets have this like internal lining structure to them, so they sit inside of the upper. The tongue itself has perforation and it is padded to prevent any form of tongue bite or friction, which I personally like because it gives the shoe a little bit more of a comfortable feel when breaking them in. We also have a loop here on the tongue. The tongue is not gusseted, but I didn't really have any issues with the tongue moving, and I think that's because of how it lays and the overall construction of it. And then once again, looking at the insole, we do have a removable foam thin insole in this model with some NOBULL branding as well, the internal portion of the shoe right here. And as a whole, that's pretty much the gist of this model's construction. It does have subtle details with it that I think make it really unique in the context of how it's intended to be used. But if you have any additional construction questions on the NOBULL Court Trainer, drop a comment down below. Alright guys, that wraps up my review of the NOBULL Court Trainer. I think if you are looking for a training shoe that can work well for court sports like tennis or pickleball, aka the fastest growing sport in America, that can also perform well in the gym, this is a good model to look into. Hopefully, these help me perform and play a little bit better with my ongoing rivalry with Ben from WOD Prep. Him and I go back and forth every single week pretty much, and I need a shoe that's going to help out my game a little bit. If you have any questions on the Court Trainer, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.